everyone. Welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics, live on Channels Television. I am Sean Kimale here in Abuja. Tonight, let's tell you that the Nigerian Bar Association has begun its national conference and is going to be in Enugu. The opening ceremony began today, where we saw South African lawmaker and rights activist Julius Malema giving a keynote address. But before we get into what has been discussed at the NBA conference, let's tell you about the situation in respect of a Chinese that has been arrested by the Nigerian police force. Is said to be a leading gang leader that has been declared wanted by the Chinese government. And with collaboration with Interpol, the Nigerian police force says it has arrested the said man and since repatriated him back to his home country. And the governors of the People's Democratic Party had finalized their meeting in Zamfara State. And after the meeting, they criticized the state of the nation and also spoke about the state of affairs of their party. The chairman of the Governors Forum of the PDP and Governor of Bauchi State, Senator Bala Mohammed, addressed the press and has asked party leaders to focus on the party's national convention as planned. Take a listen to him.
The forum particularly commends initiatives by the government of Zamfara State in significantly curbing insecurity within the state, but condemns the continued monstrous killings in Katsina, Plateau, Niger, Benue State and other parts of the country, and calls on the federal government to be more responsible to the protection of lives and property of our dear citizenry. The forum condemns the over-militarization of the last Saturday by-election, characterized by widespread irregularities, vote buying, and violence, and call on Nigerians to be more circumspect in protecting their universal suffrage. The forum urges members and supporters of our great party, as well as the entire citizenry, to hold fast to the vision and principles of the PDP in spite of the growing intimidation of the opposition by the government in power. This sad situation should only be seen as a sign of serious desperation of a political party, that is the APC, with no agenda, no vision, and which is doomed to face inevitable rejection by the masses of this country in 2027.
All right, then. That's the governor of Bauchi State and the chair of the PDP Governors Forum. Let's begin the conversation on state of the nation tonight. I'm being joined by Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Professor Mike Ozekhome. Thanks so much, Prof. It's good to see you again tonight.
Thank you, Shil.
Thank you indeed. Thank you, sir. Indeed, the NBA conference has begun and it's quite interesting watching the speech of the South African lawmaker, Julius Malema, who is asking for unity on the continent. And he's also asking Nigeria to learn a lesson, a big one, considering the size of the country and the position the country holds on the continent. How significant do you think that kind of speech is?
Yeah, that speech, to me, is very significant. It's a big clarion call for Nigeria as a giant of Africa, with a population of about 237 million people by worldometer, out of Africa's 1.55 billion people, constituting 18.83% of the world population. That, look, you are the giant of Africa. You ought to get up and lead from the front, not from the back. Don't just be giant in size alone. Be giant in acts, in action. And I think that clarion call is very important. Having regard to the history of Africa, which was once referred to as the dark continent. You need to read Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And then you will see that the entire 1885 Berlin West Africa Conference, which was midwifed by Otto von Bismarck, the first German chancellor, was all about partitioning Africa, the scramble for Africa, where Europe was giving virtually the entire coastal Africa. They just say, Nigeria, you take this. Portugal, you have this. And why were they doing that? It was to get hold of our vast mineral resources, ivory, agricultural resources, cotton, why they will now manufacture and sell to us. So that made Europe to have economic advantage over Africa to date. That is what happened. And so when a person like Malema spoke, he's a strong voice in Africa, in the opposition. He shows what an opposition should be, not bread and butter opposition that can be bought over.
Yeah, let me allow our viewers, and let me remind for people who did not watch, and it's quite interesting. I'm bringing this conversation up because it's important. If you see what happens in Europe, for those who travel around Europe, you see the kind of synergy in terms of trade, transportation, movement, how they coalesce in progress and development. And it doesn't look like, it looks like a continent. And you move around Africa, it's a lot of difference. And he's asking, if South Africa, for example, is collaborating with Nigeria in the area of oil and gas, and South Africa with its strength in mining, the kind of development that we will see. Let me remind you of what Malema said and what the Sultan of Sokoto also said, because he was also present at that opening event.
You need to continue the efforts of law reform so that you can gradually decolonize our laws, bringing them closer to our values, our culture. Also, I hope that we can find time to address the issues of social justice so that we can address the glaring inequalities in our societies and create a more integrated society with the kind of cohesion that can see us through.
Our duty as lawmakers, as practitioners post-independence, demands of us to scrutinize existing laws and where necessary make amendments or even introduce new laws to liberate our people from the parasitic oppression that they are exposed to.
In all of this, I know the lawyers, one of the largest gathering of any professional in the country, and also lawyers are very significant. They're like the conscience of the nation. The nation needs to learn quite a few things, isn't it? We are looking at a point where we're talking about constitutional reforms, electoral reforms. How significant do you think these meetings will be for our polity?
It will be very significant. But before that, let me quickly touch that. What Malema may have left out, or what we should know, is that Africa itself, in all fairness to her, has taken some initiative, like the 2018 African Continental Free Zone area, which was an agreement between 54 out of the 55 African union nations. I think that's quite a good step, which is to liberalize trade and remove tariffs and bring about regional economic cooperation. For that, we should give Africa some kudos. For the NBA, I think this is a make or mar conference, because things are really rough for us in Nigeria. We need to speak truth to power. We need to challenge impunity. We need to tell ourselves the home truth, not balming gaping wounds with beautiful bandage, then gaping wounds with beautiful bandage, then spraying Sasarobia perfume, pretending that all is well. In terms of electoral reforms, we saw what happened at the 2022 elections, presidential elections especially. about beavers, transmission, real-time transmission of results. We see the problems confronting the country, constitutional matters, whether we should actually be embarking on some constitutional amendments when we should be thinking of a brand new constitution as the patriots have proposed, so as to start from a fresh beginning, a tabula rasa, as I called it here last time. So these are issues. We need to talk about security challenges, the security agencies themselves, about human rights, rule of law. I am going to be a participant in some of these sessions. We need to take Nigeria forward. We need to move forward. That is why this conference is very significant.
I know that you and some of the colleagues in the Patriots, for example, are talking about constitutional reforms. And you are not even talking about reforms. You are talking about an outright change of what we have.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, I saw the governor of Osun State tweeting and asking the Attorney General to order the release of the withheld local government allocations for Osun State. It brings to bear a lot of questions as to how this saga had progressed over the months. What are your views on what has become a major tussle between the federal government and Osun State? And has come forward to the point that the governor of the state is now asking the federal government release the allocations meant for the local government.
I think, honestly speaking, there is no reason why Osun State local government allocation should be withheld by the federal government. Whether you go by Section 162 of the Constitution, or you go by the decision of the Supreme Court last year in Attorney General of Abia against Attorney General of the Federation, where the Supreme Court made it clear that funds meant for local governments should be paid directly to them. The local government chairmen and councillors that are in place in Osun State today are those of the PDP that emerged from an election held on the 22nd of February 2025. After an Elisha High Court had given it the go-ahead for the holding of these elections, based on subsisting extant judgments that were displayed before the court. What were these judgments? The elections, by way of a little history to this saga, because I've followed and I've participated, and I think it should be. This is when the Attorney General of the Federation should stamp his feet on the ground. I say no to politics, yes to my role as the Chief Law Officer of the Federation, whose allegiance is not to the federal government, but to the Federation.
Although he's a minister.
Yes,
and that's why
I'm coming there.
That's why a lot of people have said, split that rule.
I have said that.
Let there be a Minister of Justice, let there be Attorney General of the Federation.
The 2005 National Conference have called for a split. I will come to that. But what is a little background? On 15th October 2022, the then governor of Osun State, Governor Yetola, made elections to be conducted by OSEC, Osun State Independent Electoral Commission. Now, the elections threw up the APC as the winners. PDP quickly went to court in a suit, let me call it 94 suit, blah, blah, 94, or call it A, and challenged the elections. Now, the Federal High Court, Oshogbo, heard the matter and heard that the election was conducted based on a law that had been overtaken by time, that was no longer in existence. So the elections were nullified, and those elected thrown out of office, dismissed, sacked. The judgment is there. Meanwhile, Another political party, APP, or People's Party, also went to court. But the difference is that while the PDP went to court before a new law came into being, the APP went to court after a new law had been promulgated. The Federal High Court of Oshogbo, in a similar vein, also sacked the APC chairman and councillors, meaning 2 judgments sacking them from office.
And you know what happened after that judgment?
Yeah.
There was chaos. After that judgment, the PDP are saying they are going to take over. APC said they are returning, and there was clash. In fact, people died.
When they were
and that was a very sad, sad
situation
in that state.
The government was forced to set up some caretaker committees, even though the Supreme Court had now made it clear you can't set up caretaker committees. So in the 2 judgments, APC appealed. In fact, in the second judgment, it was the APC that applied to be joined, the one of APP. They applied to be joined. So they now went to court with APM and one Nuruddin. They appealed against the decision, giving victory to the PDP.
By the Elisha Court?
By the Oshogbo
Court. Yeah.
So, on the 13th of January this year, when the appeal was not being prosecuted, some of the parties approached the Court of Appeal and said, dismiss this appeal. Records have not been compiled. Nothing has been done. It can't be here. The Court of Appeal listened to argument and dismissed that appeal of APC and APM, meaning that it was no longer there. That's the appeal against the judgment of the PDP. Meaning that judgment, of the APP, meaning that judgment of the APP still subsists and was still extant. Now,
not upturned by any court
of law.
Only the one in contention and set aside is that of the PDP.
Yeah,
by the appeal court.
By the appeal court. So the PDP, on the other hand, the appeal court set aside its own on the 21st of February this year. But in setting it aside, they did so because the action was filed prematurely. We call it the doctrine of prematurity. It was inchoate. Events had not happened to give what you call reasonable course of action. So they set it aside, but without doing one thing, which the APP had asked for. And that was declare null and void the removal from office and reinstate us back to office. The Court of Appeal refused to pronounce on that on the ground that it had become academic. Since we have said the lower court did not have jurisdiction to have entertained the matter at all or to have amended the originating summons because there was no reasonable course of action, there will be no need for us now to go into the substance of the matter because it had become academic.
Yeah.
So they never made any consequential order saying we are hereby reinstating.
So the matter was hanging.
It was not hanging. It means that the judgment of the PDP in 94 now subsists. Because they never, the only consequential order the Court of Appeal made in that case was the award of 250,000 naira cost against the PDP.
Prof, let me ask you this fundamental question. And this is what I like in life, either success or failure, to glean lessons from every experience.
Yeah.
And this is very, very fundamental. It is the Bola Tinubu government that went ahead and to the Supreme Court and asked that the Supreme Court should make a pronouncement on the right of the local government, which invariably gives some level of independence to that tier of government.
Yeah.
So the question here is, what lesson are we able to learn? Is the people that are being punished Because lack of disbursement of allocation means one thing. The federal government needs to understand and be on the same page, legally speaking, based on all of this back and forth. If the Attorney General's office is saying, we are trying to understand what the court is saying on this matter, and so far, we cannot release the fund. And if it's political, should the people of the state be punished?
Now, it is
by the withholding of the allocation.
Let me tell you, it is highly political. Because the Attorney General wrote a letter dated March 21 to the Minister of Finance and the coordinating Minister of the Economy to release the funds due to the local governments to the APC. Officials of whom he knew very well had been sacked from office and never reinstated by any court of law. He knew that. The Bola Tinubu administration, with all respect, should be guided by history so that we do not become like the Bourbons of European history that learned nothing and forgot nothing. As governor of Lagos State, he challenged the withholding of funds meant for Lagos State by the then President Obasanjo government. The Supreme Court held that the federal government could never withhold the funds meant for local governments in a state. That all you could say is that Lagos State has 20 recognized local governments. The creation of additional 47, the funds will not go to them, but the funds must be released. So I would have thought that if the Attorney General gave proper advice, proper guidance, which is his role as protector and defender of the national will, the national will, the people's interest, I do not see President Bola Tinubu, who himself is a rights in his own right, and say no. And let me say this. If the Attorney General failed to give the President the right advice, it is a failure on his part. And if he did give that advice, and Mr. President refused, all he needed to do is to resign from office. If I'm Attorney General and I give advice to the President, which I know is grounded in law, and he refuses to take the advice, I will resign. When Darie was removed from office, I wrote an article then. Yes, President Jonathan, you can declare a state of emergency. You can declare a state of emergency in a state. But you cannot remove a governor from office. A governor can only be removed under Section 177. And the then Attorney General of the Federation, Mohammed Bello Adoke, advised President Jonathan a state of emergency could be declared based on the clear and present danger facing us. But you cannot remove a governor. And of course, the president abided by that decision. So as of today, after the court sanctioned fresh elections in Osun State, and the elections were held, and the PDP councillors and the chairmen are in place, they ought to receive their allocation.
I don't know why.
There should be nothing barring it at all.
I don't know why I pushed you to that question. I was going to ask you about constitutional amendment, rule of law in light of the NBA conference. I don't know that you are well grounded in this matter.
I'm grounded in it.
But the question here, the lesson I want us to learn and perhaps to give is this issue of local government. A very sore point in our history.
What we should do from the system in 1976 in Nigeria, it became a third tier of government. The federal government, state government, and local governments.
But there are those who argue,
and there
are those who argue that is not a thought.
No, it is.
That as a federating unit, the state, how the federating unit stands in the 1999 Constitution. The federating unit stands at its own, on its own, and the affairs of the federating unit should not be interfered by the central government, as though he can be able to determine. And these are some of the arguments made by the Bola Tinubu administration in Lagos, that the states should be allowed, and Osun State also pushed that debate in court when they follow the Lagos debate on how the federative unit should be able to determine its own destiny.
Let me say this. The federative units in Nigeria are federal government, the states, and the local governments. And you can find them. Nigeria is a federation made up of 36 states and 774 local government areas. And even Section 162 of the Constitution, which establishes the state joint local government account, realizes that there are 3 tiers that you have to share money to. That was why at the 2014 National Conference, we argued, the 492 delegates, that we should make Nigeria a 2-tier government, federal and state. But as of today, I want anyone to challenge me on this, Nigeria is a 3-tier federation, not 2. And coming to this issue I discussed before, let me emphasize this point, that the position of the Attorney General is so crucial to our well-being. Under Section 150 of the Constitution, is appointed as the chief lawmaker, law officer of the Federation, who can sue and be sued on behalf of the federal government. In some countries, the Attorney General is not only the guardian of the public interest, he can even take up cases on behalf of the people. Now, ministers, on the other hand, you will find under sections 147, 148, 149, 150 of the Constitution. They are highly political. They are appointed by the president, and they are to be given functions like the vice president. That's why the people say the vice president is actually a spare tire, because it's left for the president to give him functions like a minister or not. But the Attorney General, again, specifically was created as an office. And under Section 174 of the Constitution, it can institute criminal proceedings, discontinue, and continue. Meaning that he occupies a certain sensitive position.
Very sensitive.
So I am saying here again now that in their constitutional amendment, which I do not believe in, because we continue to amend 1 million amendments times 1 million amendments plus 1 million amendments, cannot kill the Constitution of its original sin of being a military imposition not subjected to referendum of the people. I will never tire saying it. But whatever they are doing, the first thing they will do, if that is the way they still want to go for now, is to separate the office of the Attorney General of the Federation from that of the Minister of Justice.
All right.
The Minister of Justice could be an ordinary minister. He can meet with other ministers at political parties that they love and sloganeer. Right. But the Attorney General should be highly professional.
Give me a moment. We need to go on a break. And there are more conversations on this program tonight. And some Nigerians, eminent Nigerians, have come together and they are worried about something. They say that what we are experiencing in Nigeria is at a quantum or at the level of a civil war. And the federal government should be warned. They sent out an open letter, and I'll be revealing that to us tonight. And one of the signatories will be joining me on the program tonight. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back.
Unmatched security, timeless elegance, looking for doors that offer ultimate protection without compromising on style? Sustre Doors presents Pivot Doors, crafted for luxury and designed for durability. Our exclusive heavy...
Thanks so much, everyone, for staying with us. I've been speaking with Professor Mike Ozekhome, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Prof, just give me a moment, please. Yeah. Let's deal with this matter. The story of a coalition of Nigerian leaders who issued a powerful joint statement yesterday warning that our nation, in their words, is bleeding. They say the killings across parts of Nigeria now rival war zones like Ukraine and Gaza, with over 10,000 deaths recorded in just 2 years, according to the Amnesty International figures. From Benue to Zamfara, Plateau to Katsina, entire communities have been sacked, displaced and left to fend for themselves as bandits. Boko Haram and other armed groups tighten their grip. The leaders insist this is no longer just about farmer-elder clashes or ethnic tensions. They call it a full-blown security collapse that demands urgent, extraordinary action. Their proposal One of it is a presidential task force on national security, with sweeping powers to restore peace and rebuild public trust. But will the government listen and take action too? The one that history will not judge the bandits, but it will judge those in power who had a chance to act and failed. The question now is whether this government and Nigeria's political elites can rise above differences to reclaim our nation's future. For millions of Nigerians who are living in fear, the call is urgent. They're saying, protect us or risk losing the country itself. Tonight, I'm being joined by one of the signatories to the letter that's been written to the president. Some of them include former leaders in public office and journalists and a host of eminent Nigerians, former ministers. Tonight, I'm being joined by a former Minister of Aviation, Mr. Osita Chidoka. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, Sharon. I'm delighted to be with you.
Thank you so much indeed. You and your friends and colleagues came together in that letter. Frank Nweke Jr., a host of eminent Nigerians from the North Central to the Northeast to the Northwest, in fact, names like Ismail Ahmed, Kadira Ahmed, a few of them who are from the core north of the country, and those who are from the deep west and south of the country have come together to write this letter. And that letter, you described Nigeria as bleeding and compared our casualty figures to war zones like Ukraine and Gaza. Is Nigeria effectively an undeclared civil war?
Well, from the data, it's about more than a civil war. If you look at the number of people that have been killed in Gaza, in Syria, and in other conflicts around the world, you will see that Nigeria, though at peace, technically at peace, is showing symptoms far more deeper than countries at war. This whole group came about. I went to Plateau State for an event, and after the event and listening to the villagers and to the local government officials and all the government officials I met during the course of my trip, I came to the conclusion that our country is hurting badly. There is despondency, and there seems to be no hope, and there seems to be no trust. So I reached out to a couple of my friends, both from the different parties. There's APC, there's PDP, there's people with other interests, civil society people, and they all were thinking the same thing, interestingly. So we all decided to come together, both people in the academia and across various segments of Nigeria. And writing the letter itself was a learning point for all of us, because we saw the sensitivities of people from different regions of the country. We understood the feelings from the different aspects of the country. So this letter is our call out to the nation to say the country is bleeding and it is time to stop it. It is time, before we lose this country, we need to come together. So this is not a blame game. This is not passing the buck to anybody, but we're calling on the government of the day to show leadership and bring leaders of the country across the country to see how we can resolve this descent to anarchy. And on a smaller scale, you can see the type of violence and activities we're witnessing at the airport, from Palm 1 to Miss Emerson. You could see that there is a total disregard for law and order, for security in the country. And it goes back to what happened a few days ago in Katsina, when almost 27 people were killed in a mosque who were there for prayers. And then, of course, the kidnapping that took place. So it is a situation that is just beyond internal crisis anymore. The government has to high-grade this and say we are in an existential crisis and we need to solve it. The same seriousness with which we faced the issue of whether it is fuel subsidy, whether it is the Naira, floating of the Naira, we need to bring that same seriousness and national consensus around the issue of violence. And it will give us an opportunity to redefine our security system.
Are you over-exaggerating the matter in the manner in which you captured it, you and your colleagues? And you have argued in that letter and that you said the Nigerian state has surrendered its monopoly on the use of force. Is this an admission that the state has lost control to non-state actors, or is this an exaggerated situation of the state of affairs?
Well, when we heard that the Air Force used air power within Nigerian borders to rescue people yesterday, that the Nigerian Air Force was using air power, I do not know what else will be exaggeration. If we have to use our air power to restore order in certain parts of the country, if we have to understand that the Sahel region, all the way to Burkina Faso, all the way from Niger to Faso to Mali, are now witnessing intense stress that is impacting us here in Nigeria. And then taking that together in the northeast and other security forces, our military are now in 36 states of the Federation. That's not a common. It is not something that should be ordinary. That the military made for external fighting they are now stuck in Nigeria fighting a war where they are using.
Oh dear. There's a bit of a technical glitch there, but Mr. Osun Chidoka has been speaking to us on the letter written by these eminent Nigerians who think that the nation needs to rise up and really pay more attention to the issue of security, which is now, we are seeing rising figures in number of attacks, and we're just 8 months into the year 2025. A spike in the number of attacks and the deaths from what non-state actors have melted on the nation and innocent people, communities being sacked, and government and security agencies are saying efforts are being taken. But in all of these, Mr. Chidoka is back with us. One of the recommendations, because one thing I like about what you have said, and I don't think a lot of you on that list are flippant people, and that's why it's gotten our attention on this channel. I see the caliber of persons on that letter, eminent people who had paid their dues in the development of this country. Journalists like Kadura Ahmed, former minister like yourself and Frank Nweke Jr., coming out to say Nigeria, and in fact, a serving member of this government like Ismail Ahmed. And when you're saying these kind of things, it shows something that Nigerians need to pay attention to this. But with the figures that I'm aware of, we saw a nosedive. We saw a southern dip in the number of attacks and deaths. And security looked better in 2024 compared to 2023. The figure says so. But in 2025, we've not, in fact, gotten to the end of the year yet. And we've almost doubled the numbers of attacks and deaths that we're seeing over the last year. So you are making a suggestion, which was one of the things that I like. You're not only highlighting the problems, but we are talking about recommendations. Your group is calling for a presidential task force on national security with extraordinary powers. Would it be a bypass existing institution, or is it the bold step Nigeria needs?
It's a bold step Nigeria needs. A nation in an existential crisis has to take strong steps to reassert its authority. Not only reasserting its authority, but giving the citizens confidence that the country, the nation is alive to its responsibility. That the state is not belittling the issue of losses of lives. When lives are lost, 27 people killed in a mosque, in any other society, this will be the issue. This will even cause mayhem in the civil society in any country. Now, you put that together with that, what you said in 2025, we've seen a rise. And that rise, we are saying there is need for the whole country, across opposition, across the government of the day, across the National Assembly, to sit down again and take a strong look at both the kinetic and non-kinetic strategies to bring him back the dignity of man, to bring him back the responsibility that the purpose of government is the safety of lives. That is the number one purpose. We've surrendered our sovereignty to the government because we want to be assured of the safety of our lives. So now, youth corps members are not going to certain states of the country. People posted in certain states do not go. Students are no more going to universities outside their home area. The ties that bound us as a country, all of us in that group, we share something in common. We were all young people in the 70s. Many of us went to federal government colleges, state colleges that had people from across the country coming together. Mohammed was former Minister of Environment in the APC government. Like you said, people from diverse backgrounds. But we all remember when we used to travel by train in this country. I remember very well when I used to go to Maiduguri, traveling all night to go to Maiduguri. So we want our country back. And we're saying, time for government to say, number one issue in Nigeria today is the safety of the lives and property of citizens. And we're going to take any measure, no matter how extraordinary, to restore order to Nigeria. We cannot have a country we have surrendered to all people, to non-state actors. That is a recipe for disaster. That is a recipe for breakdown of law and order. That is why I came out strongly opposing the kid gloves with which we are treating people who are challenging law enforcement officers in Nigeria. And I think my colleagues, all of us here, from Ugebujo to Sam Amadi to Rotimi, all of us in that group share that same philosophy. Time to get our country back. So we are going to engage the government. We are sending these letters to the National Security Advisor, to the President, to the Senate President, to the Speaker. And we are saying, time to take back our country. We cannot surrender this country to non-state actors. And it is totally unacceptable, and it is the road to Syria.
Mohammed Abdullahi, representing North Central on that list. Kadir Ahmed, Northwest. Nuruddin Mohammed, Northwest. Abdullahi May Basira, North Central. Dr. Ali Adamu, Northeast. Bashiru Isa, Northwest. Ismail Ahmed, Northwest. Dr. Usman Balami, Northeast. Paul Ogbole, North Central. Jamila Bio Ibrahim, former Minister, North Central. And Abu Bukar Abba Masha, Northeast, and the likes of Sam Amadi, Ugo Egbujo, Toye Cole, Yemi Adamolekun, Tolu Aderemi, Frank Nweke Jr., yourself, and Sergio Sogun from the southern region of the country, all coming together. But in all of this, one thing that I see that is very fundamental is you are also making comparison and with lessons that we need to learn, and perhaps what Nigeria also needs to look at. And you mentioned countries like Rwanda, Colombia, and Northern Ireland, who you say have turned the tide by reforming their security forces and pursuing reconciliation. But I speak closely to and regularly with very top officials within the security agencies, and things that I cannot even say on television that are of knowledge of the effort that are being made in the intelligence community and even in the forces. And it does look to me, I spoke with the CDS a few days ago, who said it does look like there's some political ants and manipulation in the kind of attacks that we say. And that's a sad scenario playing out in our country if politics is being brought into all of this. But if there's any lesson to be learned from these three countries that you have mentioned, what would those be?
The first lesson is that they all, first of all, created elite consensus. The elites of the country realized that it was not in anybody's interest, both government and opposition, to have a country controlled by non-state actors. So if the opposition today is hailing the non-state actors, even if they form the government tomorrow, they will not be able to bring down the non-state actors. So there is need for unity of purpose. There is need for elite consensus. And I think that the government needs to pursue that. Just like we have the economic team in the country, we need to have a social team. A team that brings us together to have our common Nigerianness, our common humanity back to the table, so that both the opposition, both the government in power will know that on issues affecting our security, we are united. And that means that there needs to be a measure of trust and confidence building to bring that to happen. This is one of the things that happened in the 3 countries we mentioned. In Colombia, in Rwanda, and in Ireland, the elites realized that there is need for consensus. The second one is that we need to rethink our security architecture. And I think so many people have spoken about that. I believe the National Security Advisor is doing a lot on that. The government of the day is probably doing a lot on that. But the idea that our police is a national police with less than 400,000 people manning the country down to DPOs in the state is now something that we need to review. For me, I think that when we use the word policing, it means that we are talking about all the security agencies in the country. So it means that the policing power that is in the Nigerian police has been handed over to our civil defense, to our Federal Road Safety Commission, to our state vigilantes. So there needs to be common training, common information sharing. We need to stop thinking of police as sitting down in the Inspector General's of Police office. We need to think of police as every law enforcement officer, including the one in your street that is from a private security company. All of them must work harmoniously to build what I call a new security architecture. And finally will be that after reforming security, we noticed that in all of this country, what they did was to be open and transparent about the sources of the problem, the hate, the bitterness, the ethnicity, the whatever are the drivers. We need to honestly address them to be able to bring peace back to Nigeria. But it is urgent. The country is bleeding. We need to do that right now.
Osita Chidoka, former Minister of Aviation, thanks so much indeed for your time. I'm not done on the program yet. I'd like to get Professor Mark Ozekhome's final thought, and he's going to touch on this issue of security. And it comes down to one thing, the constitutional review that we're talking about. What must we fix in our constitution to get this done? And how urgent should the government of the day fix it? Well, that's going to be after this break, everyone. Join us again. Everyone for staying with us. Our final moment now with Professor Mike Ozekhome, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. You heard what Osita Chidoka. In May of 2025 alone, we saw over 600 deaths relating to insurgent and violent-related attacks. In 2024, we saw over 2,000 deaths. In 2024, so about 7.something% of the entire deaths that we saw in 2024 happened only in 1 month of 2025. And we started talking about politics, and the CDS said, you can't take away politics from all of it.
It's a very grim situation, and I like the Chidoka Forum, their intervention. We are in a very strong, a very dirty situation. I don't want to use words that are not good for the public. We are not. Nigeria is literally crumbling. We must be very careful to hold this country together. When you see signs like this, they are signs of a failed or a failing nation. One of the symptoms of a failed nation is when non-state actors possess equal or more potent power than the sovereign government that is voted into power by the people. And when you go to some places like Niger State, Northeast, like Borno, you see some of these non-state actors occupying large swaths of land, collecting taxes from the indigenes, issuing identity cards, planting their flags. Those are some of the symptoms of a failed nation. And I'm saying Nigerians need to sit down to have a constitutional conference where all these things will be discussed, because these are symptoms.
We're totally out of time. But there was something that I also wanted to, there is a part of the Osun matter, which is that position of the appeal court.
The appeal court, on the 13th of June this year, the APC had gone back to the Court of Appeal based on their appeal that was dismissed on the 13th of January this year, to say, look, help us release this case, because they had become aware that there was no judgment preventing the federal government from paying the allocation to the now validly elected local government chairmen and councillors in Osun State on the platform of PD. So they went back to the Court of Appeal, Akure Division, to say, help us release this matter. A full court of Justice Chudi Obiora, Justice Oyebisi Omoleye, and Justice Hadiza Shegari unanimously dismissed or struck out the motion for releasing on the ground that there was no basis for it at all. Recognizing the judgment, recognizing the election of the present local government chairman. So my appeal to the Attorney General is that there's no need for this political statement.
Thank you so much.
Order that these funds be released to them.
Thanks, Prof. It's good to see you again. I appreciate
thank
it.
you.
That's our show tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Kemale. God bless Nigeria.